Hi guys, once again I'm back with a new topic. Let's welcome all for my show. That's Prime Discussion by Veer in an English version. So today my topic is on English literature. So for now we had discussed with the various segment in three mostly likable languages in India, that's Kannada, English and Hindi. So after all these 30 effective episodes, now I'm just giving a most valuable and most hot topic of the era, that's English literature. So in my 6th episode we already discussed about Urdu literature. Apart from that, today I picked such a topic which so many people doesn't know, and some people are more proficient than me. So I just welcome you all for my one and only show, that's Prime Discussion by Veer. Let's begin. So if we take an English literature, it has divided into 3 segments, that is Old English, Middle English and Modern English. And in Old English, in 450 to 1066 time comes, and the Middle English, it will come around 11th century to 14th century, and after that English Renaissance, that is 1500 to 1660, Restoration Age, that is 1600 to 1700, thereafter 18th century, and Victorian literature and 20th century. And apart from, I also discuss the Nobel Prizes or Nobel laureates from English literature. So let's begin with the research and in-depth study of English literature. So if you take the language English, it came from basically England. You also knew that English people conquered almost all of the part from the world, but previously it also conquered by Irvine peoples. So basically in England, the Saxon and German tribes was there. During that era, the English took a birth. And after the victories of Rome's, the Norwegians conquered at 1066. During this era, there are a very famous genre. So many people wrote the poems, drama, novels. And some of the famous genres was epic poetry, hagiography, sermons, Bible translations, legal works, and chronics and riddles. And 400 plus manuscripts we still got for our research purposes. And the epic poems was very popular during that era. And Beowulf and Novellian Codex were the famous epic poems. And famous poets in Old English, as you also knew that, the Cadman, Bede Alfred the Great, they wrote the Dream of the Road. In 10th century, the Wanderer and the Seafarer were the famous poems we can see. And after that, we get information about Middle English. That is, after the Normians, the certain influence in English from French and Latin we could see from this era. And Bible translations happened, and poems and drama and history, all kind of literature work carried out. In this era, the Bible translations was a famous work, and it got more popularity by Wycliffe Bible. In 1382-1395, it was the chief inspiration and for the all movements. So during the 13th century, King Hone and Havelock the Dane, these two literature were really appreciated. In the 14th century, Geoffrey Chaucer wrote his unique poems. That is, he is also called as a pearl poet. He wrote on Sir Gawain and Green Knight. Landlords who wrote Piers Plowman. And after that, it is the era of Elizabeth, the Queen Elizabeth, in 1558 to 1603. The Edmund Spenser, 1552 to 1599, he wrote on the Fierce Queen. Sir Philip Sidney wrote Astrophel and Stella. Thomas Campion was the big writer, and he wrote so many poems and playwrights during 1567 to 1620. And during this time only, the playwriting also got started. The Godbury, the Sackville and Norton wrote the drama. Thomas Kidd wrote the Spanish tragedy. And we all knew that from our childhood, still we appreciate and love and admire the famous English playwright. That's none other than William Shakespeare. His era was 1564 to 1660, and he wrote many poems and playwrights, histories, tragedies, comedies, and romance. And he also was there in Jacobean. You also remember that if you are the science student, so we already studied Jacobean matrix. The Jacobean is the scientist and mathematician who developed the matrix formation. During that time, the William Shakespeare wrote so many poems. And you also knew that the literature from William Shakespeare still remembered, and so many plays still running. And I'm just telling you the key features and the bird view of the English literature, not in detail. So after that, the Jacobean periods starts. The William Shakespeare writes the play like a Problems play, The Tempest. And after that, he also wrote so many plays. That's I'm not going to discuss now. That's already a known fact. During that era, there are so many English playwrights wrote so many dramas, like Ben Jonson in 1572 to 1637. He wrote A Theory of Humans, and Wolfone, Bartholomew Fair, and The Night of Burning Pastels. The Reverie play, which is written by Thomas Kidd, The White Devil, Duchess of Malfia, and Changeling. These all are written by Thomas Middle. And the poetry during this Jacobean period, the George Champion in 1559 to 1634, the George Herbert, 1593 to 1634, the Henry Vaughan, Andrew Marvell, Richard Crashaw. These are the famous poets during the 15th century. And after this 15th century, we had so many poets, novelists, and playwrights. And initially, the English literature got started from United Kingdom, that is Wales and England. So after that, it will spread to United States, that's America, and thereafter it will spread to Commonwealth countries like India, Asia, all Asian parts, and African parts, Australia, New Zealand, and etc. now. So let's discuss the most significant changes in English literature during Romanticisms and Victorian time. Before that, we have information about early Renaissance and late Renaissance. So I have information of late Renaissance, 1625 to 1660. In this time, the Richard Crashaw, Andrew Marvell, Thomas Tracker, Henry Weoff, these are the famous poets wrote on poems and write so many play and scripts for mankind based on the metaphysical activities and metaphysical poems. Thereafter, we get information about Cavalier poets, the Robert Herrick, Richard Lawrence, Thomas Cashew, and Sir John Suberky, influenced by Ben Jonson. After that, we get information the Restoration Age, that is 1660 to 1700. In this time, the poetry was in a good stage. So many poets came up with unique ideas in writing, like John Milton. He wrote on religious flux and political upheaval, and as usual, epic poems. And on social activities. And after that, John Dryden, who is a poet, literature critic, translator, and playwright. And Macflinnick, Alexander Pope. And during this time, the prose also comes. The religious writing is often popular during this time, and fiction, journalism came into the picture. The John Locke, the treatise on government, and the novel era started during this time. The Afra Benon wrote Orinoco in 1688, and a drama series started. The famous playwrights John Dryden, William Wensky, George Eath, William Congreve. He wrote A Way of World, The Provoked Wife, etc. And after that, we have information about 18th century, the famous poet playwrights, fiction writers. And during this time, it is started to about fictions and non-fictions. This is the era of Augustus literature, that is 1700 onwards. So the rational and scientific, religious, social and political, economical issue was so famous during this time. And poem also evergreen subject. The famous poet during the 18th century were James Thomson, who lived from 1700 to 1748, Edward Young, who wrote Night Thoughts, Alexander Pope, who lived 1688 to 1744, and Dunassiet 1728 to 43. These are the four famous, and still more poets were there. Whatever I got the information from 18th century, these are the famous poets. And the prose, the Daniel Defoe, 1719, he wrote on Roxana and Moll Flanders and Robinson Crusoe. And after that, Jonathan Swift, that everybody knew across the globe, that is still so many cartoons, and we had seen so many movies. That's Gulliver Travels. And novels again started in this era, that is Henry Fielding. He wrote on the prose and satire. Samuel Richardson, who came into the picture in 1689 to 1761. Roderick Random, The Pirigis Pickle in 1751. And after this era, there is a time for sensibility literature. During 1750 to 1798, so many writers wrote the literature in a sensible way. The Samuel Johnson, 1709 to 84, he is the poet, modelist, literary critic, essayist, biographers, editor, and lexicography. And after that, hi Sai Karthik Reddy sir. So I'm just talking on English literature, so for my research and studies. So if I make any grammatical mistakes or vocabulary mistakes, or if I wrong into collecting the information, please forgive me. So for now, whatever my knowledge, I'm just telling in front of you all for the information and the knowledge purpose. And after that, there are so many Irish authors come into the picture. They write so many novels, poems, like Vicars of Wakefield, and so many poets comes into action, like Oliver Goldsmith, Richard Brinsley Sheridan, Lawrence Strain, Fran Burney. They wrote the poems like Oliver Goldsmith, The Deserted Village, and he also wrote the play like She Stops to Conquer, The Rivals, The Covent Garden, The School of Scandals. And Lawrence Stearns wrote a novel on the Tristram's. And the Franz Bellery wrote a novel on Evelina. And after this, there is a time of romantic novels, like Walter Scott, Waverley, and John Austen's write Pride and Prejudice in 18th century. And in America, there is a literature revolution. During that time, we had so many information we got. During that time, there were a literature revolutionary on romanticism, on Gothic literature. Washington Avery, Legend of Sleepy Hollow. He wrote the novel and the poet. The Rip Van Winkle, James Fennim Coops. These are the few people from America whose contribution towards the English literature is still remembered. And during the Victorian literature, that is 1837 to 1901, the Charles Dickens, 1812 to 70, wrote The Bleak House, Emily Brontë, Elizabeth Gaskell, Anthony Trollope, George Eliot, Middlemarch, George Meredith, writes Ordeal of Richard Feverel. Thomas Henry, he writes on the mayor of Castlebridge and test of Juvrubing village. After that, we get on romantic poetry during 1759 to 1796. The famous poets are Robert Burns, William Blake. He writes on Songs of Innocence in 1789, Songs of Experience 1794. Williams Wordsworth, he lived around 1770 to 1850. He writes on Rings of Ancient Mariner. Samuel Taylor, Roulard Sade, Thomas De Quincey, the Valet Scott. Though William Wordsworth writes, the line composed few miles above Tintin Abbey, resolution of independence, intimation of immortality from the recovery of early childhood. And during this time, the Lord Baron, the Percy Bysshe Shelley, and John Keats, also the famous novelists and poets. And during the late 17th, the John Clare and George Crabbe also contributed a lot in English literature. So after that, the valuable information, we just have a look on the following information on the English literature spreading on across the England and USA, like Commonwealth countries like Australia, Canada, India, New Zealand, Pakistan, and Africa. So many poets, novelists, playwrights came into the picture during this time. From Africa, Salman Rushdie, V.S. Naipaul, and Ahib. And Canada, the Lawrence Hill, Margaret Atwood, Alias Morin, and Cashils. And you also knew that the modern fantasy, which makes us to imagine and take us into the different world. We still remember and still fantasized and still want to love to watch these kind of movies or novels written by the famous novelist like J.K. Rowling's The Harry Potter series, the J.R.R. Tolkien, The Hobbit, Lords of Rings series, says C.S. Lewis, The Chronics of Narnia. So here are the some notified and famous personality I am going to take in this occasion. The names of Nobel laureates for English literature from 1907 to still. So first Nobel Award winner for English literature is Rudyard Kipling, 1907. Second, Rabindranath Tagore, 1913. W.B. Yeats, 1923. George Bernard, 1925. He's from Ireland. Sinclair Lewis, 1930. John Galsworthy, 1932. Eugene Oliver, 1936. Pearl S. Buck, 1938. He's from US. T.S. Eliot, 1948, UK. William Fox, 1949, US. Bertrand Russell, 1950, UK. Winston Churchill, 1953, UK. Ernest Hemingway, 54. John Steinbeck, 1962. Samuel Beckett, 1969. Patrick White, 1973. Isaac Bashir Singer, 1978, he's from US. William Golding, 1983, from UK. Whole Sinica, 1986, the first African writer who got and who honored with the Nobel Award. Joseph Brodsky, 1987, from USA. Nordvig Godmer, 1991, from South Africa. Dick Walcott, 1992, from West Indies. Toni Morrison, 1993, from USA. Summers Henry, 1995, from Ireland. V.S. Naipur, 2001, from UK. James Curtis, 2003, from South Africa. Doris Lessing, 2007, from UK. Elise Monaro, 2013, from Canada. Bo Delan, 2016, from USA. And finally, previous year, Kozo Istos, 2017, from UK, got honorary Nobel Award. So these are the few and a bare view of English literature from ancient times till now. And these are the very first and prolific information whatever I got, and so far now with the little patience I try to convey you and contributors for English literature. And in India also we have a very famous writers like Rabindranath Tagore, who was the second Nobel Award winner for English literature, and so many novel writers and so many travel writers and biography, like that. Everything we get for our self-improvement. So this is the due to the lack of time, I just made my confined study on the English literature. Actually, the English literature is the major for MA in English in India or worldwide. It's a 2 years course that cannot be discussed within a 20 minutes or 25 minutes stipulated timing. So if I said anything wrong or grammatically I made a mistake, vocabulary if I make a mistake, if my informations are wrong, please forgive me. So whatever I got information from the books, from the library and Google and the internets and from research papers, I just delivered in front of you. So if you get still more information, please comment on this section. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. Share as possible as with your all friends, relatives and colleagues, and make this show famous. So this is my show, that is Prime Discussion by Veer, and you are watching 31st episode, that is English literature. Thank you for watching one and all. If you really like, then please hit the like button, share it, and if you want to watch my all upcoming videos or previous videos, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel, that is Prime Discussion by Veer. So I will come up with hot and new topics in coming episodes. So if you wanted to suggest also, that's welcome. Please suggest which topic you would like to watch. That also I consider, and in upcoming days I'm going to discuss on that topics. So previously few people suggested me to talk on personality development or stress management. I just took from their advice and made 2 episodes on stress management and personality development. So if you also wanted to have a more kind of subjects, please comment it on the below section. So you could watch my videos on FB, my page, that is Prime Discussion by Veer, and also in YouTube, Prime Discussion by Veer. So keep watching and keep supporting. Jai Hind, Jai Karnataka. have a peace. Bye bye.